Hey, everybody, I'm Frank Ryan.
Hi, guys. I am Adam Pettingell, and today we have another special guest, even though every guest we have is always special. But today, a bigger star, a local star, some would say, and that's Nick Jr. And Nick Jr. is the owner, the big not Hefe of the Cola's Pizza.
That's
and so welcome, Nick.
Thank you all very much.
Welcome,
Great.
Thank you. That's gonna be a trouble thing. I'm gonna forget that all the time.
Nick Jr.?
Yeah.
I want to hear you pronounce his last name.
Yeah, there you go.
No. I always I was thinking about this in the shower. I was thinking you should do it because you're Italian.
Yeah. No, go ahead. But no, I'm thinking I want to hear you do it. You can't even remember to say Junior.
I thought that was the last name.
Hey, do you pronounce it Caggiano?
Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Caggiano.
Oh,
there you go.
man.
Got
He
it
was
right.
practicing that. I'm sure he rang up some relatives last night.
It's two G's. It's not that hard, buddy.
No.
It's just like in your last name, right? Or is it just one?
No, 1G. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about this local business that has been around since 1971.
71. June 11th, 1971.
It's kind of like a household name if you're a local around here. But tell us, obviously you didn't start it.
I was 6. But I remember it.
You say you look great.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Talk us through it. Talk us through how it all began.
Oh, God. It really, to be honest with you, it all began in Bay Vista, which is just right down the road from us here. Believe it or not, I was born in BB in 1965. Of course, came home, went to Bay Vista. Like I said, it's a development right behind here, right behind Big Fish. 1969, 1970, my sister was born. It's how it all started. This is the beginning of it all. My sister was born. She's still living, 55 years old now. She was a spina bifida, which she's, I'm going to say sort of born in a wheelchair. She's never walked. Gets around real well in the wheelchair, does real well, works at the store, you know.
I've seen it multiple times.
It's unbelievable. It's a great, wonderful woman. But that's how it started. He needed some, he needed some extra money to pay for the bills. You know, back then, you got to realize, you're talking 1970, wasn't a lot of money coming in. And he had 4 sisters. My father had 4 sisters, and they had a pizza. Recipe. So one day he said, what the heck? He said, I'll make a pizza at home. So he made the pizza at the house there, and we lived in a development, had about 10 or 12 streets, and everybody worked. Obviously, back then, everybody just worked 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Everybody had off Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So on Friday night, I would say probably 1970 in there somewhere, he started making the pizzas out of his house. And next thing you know, the neighbors started coming over, and said, man, I'll take a pizza. And actually, another neighbor came over, and before you know it, I think it was like 15 large pizzas a Friday night that he was selling out of the back of his house, which is incredible. You can't even do that now.
Yeah, right. But it wasn't his primary. This is your dad.
Yeah,
it wasn't his primary job.
No. He worked at Draper King Cole. He worked at Draper King Cole, where Dogfish is right now. That was a cannery back in the early '60s. Harry Bonk owned it. In fact, it was the biggest private cannery in the whole United States. It was huge cannery. And my father was he was one of the general managers there. And he did this on the side, just decided, I'll make a pizza, let's see what happens.
Right.
Like I said, next thing you know, you had 15, 20 people coming over on Friday night, and just crazy, had no boxes to put them in. We have no idea what he first started putting them in. We really don't know. We don't know.
That'd be great.
And then what happens, crazy, an unbelievable, crazy story. They were at the time in Rehoboth. Now there was a restaurant in Rehoboth, the Avenue Inn, where the Avenue Hotel is right now.
Yeah.
Well, that was Kenny Simpler's Avenue Inn. Well, it was pretty big restaurant, and had a big banquet room. He goes to the Lions Club. He was a Lions Club member, and he goes to the banquet, and somebody introduced him to Harlan Passwater, who at the time worked for Federal Paper in Salisbury, Maryland. Federal Paper's still actually there. It's still there in Salisbury. And I'll never forget the story. They said, somebody said to my dad, hey, why don't you go introduce yourself to Harlan? He sells pizza boxes. And my dad said, point blank, I can't afford pizza boxes.
No.
He says, I can't afford a pizza box, So what happens in that setting, in that meeting, in that dinner there, my mom, Joan, who she passed away unfortunately in 2017, she met Harlan's wife. Okay. And they start jibber jabbering, and I would assume the story went as, hey, yeah, we got a spine bifida daughter, where my husband works at Draper King Cole. He's making some pizza at home, this and that. And the box, I'm sure, came up. I don't know the exact story.
Yeah.
But of course, you get two women involved, and what happens? Obviously, the deal is going to be done. And
probably better, too.
They made a deal that day, and I swear to goodness to you, the house is still in Bay Vista. My dad on Wednesday would put $5 underneath a rock. And Harlan Passwaters would come, pick up the rock, pick up the $5, and leave 15 or 20 pizza boxes. And the very next week, Harlan Passwaters would do the same thing. And that's literally how Nicola Pizza started. It actually started out of the back of a house with paying out of pizza boxes $5 a week underneath a rock.
That's awesome.
The rock might even still be there for all we know, But just a bizarre, crazy story,
right.
and then.
But the story continues, right? I mean,
it keeps going and going.
Because there's the element of when your dad was off of Rehoboth Avenue.
That's correct, at 8 North 1st Street. Okay, so my mom at the time in 69, 70, worked for where Derrickson has his business right now. I cannot remember the name of it. That near Louis Pizza down there. It was a bank. It was Farmers Bank.
Oh.
Okay, that was a bank actually at one time back in the 60s and 70s, and it was called Farmers Bank because guess what? In the 60s and 70s around here, there was nothing but farmers. No farmers are left anymore. It's now all building, as you all know. But anyway, it was called Farmers Bank. My mom worked there, and she would roam around on her lunch break. On her lunch break, just walk the streets of Rehoboth. She'd just look in all the stores, and at the 8 North 1st Street location, which was around the corner, it was a building, and in the front it was a flower shop. A husband and wife, they owned a flower shop, and he made shoes. So in the front of the building at the time was the flower shop that his wife ran, and then in the back was the shoe repair store, husband and wife. So one day, I would say probably late 70s or so, my mom walked around and went into the store like she always did. Once a week, whatever in the heck it was. And the gentleman in there was really upset. My mom said, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" He said, "Well, my wife died. Oh. She passed away, unfortunately." And he says, "The only reason I had this business was for her." He says, I don't want to do this anymore, So, okay, Sarah goes, so then my mom and dad started the pizzas all of a sudden probably started to get maybe 20, 25, a weekend, out of the store, out of the house there, and my dad said, "Man, we need a bigger plate. We need something we need, So, of course, back then interest rates were 18%. And, times my dad still didn't have any money. He wasn't making any money, So they tried to get a loan for 71 for 8 North 1st Street there, and nobody would give them a loan. Everybody turned them down, So finally one day, someone from Farmers Bank, I would assume it was the president of Farmers Bank. It's an ironic little story or little sidebar here. The grandson of the gentleman that I think did the notary note for my mom and dad actually came in the other day, came in about a month ago.
That's cool.
Yeah, and we're talking, you know what I mean? And and she said, "Oh my God, it's my grandfather." I said, "You know what? I'm going to tell you a story." I said, "I never did ask my mom. They said she's the only one that knew. My dad does not know to this day. At least he says he doesn't. That I think your grandfather signed a promissory note for Nicola Pizza to originally start." He said, "What?" I said, "Well, that's just what I heard. I'm 10, at the time, so it's vaguely remember things, you know what I mean? But that's how it came to me, And Farmers Bank, they put up the promissory note and started the business in 1971. They opened June 11th, 1971, and it was such a a big hit that summer. Of course, back then you had Louis. Louis wasn't even in the pizza business then. Louis was in the hamburger business.
Oh,
yeah. Louis was in the hamburger business. Grotto was the only pizza place in Rehoboth. He came in 1960. You're talking 11 years later, and my dad, they opened up the place, and it went so well. They started really. I guess because there weren't many places to eat. And of course, the pizza was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the pizza wasn't good, but I don't think it's like now. They're a dime a dozen. I think back then there was only really 4 or 5 places to eat, maybe. Sure. So he really started picking it up. Then the lifeguards came in. We'll go into the Nicoboli here eventually, which that boomed everything. Obviously, that put us on.
But people were worried, right? And then we think about Rehoboth Avenue now, and we think, well, where the original Nakota's was, it's just off the side. It's just off the side there.
Right.
But some people were worried that being off the side, was going to be like.
Correct.
No good for you guys at all.
You couldn't make it. Nobody could make it all on the side street. We called it the side street.
Which we couldn't imagine now. Of course. We couldn't imagine
now there's 100 restaurants on the side street. But back then there was none. It was houses and everything. Nothing. Nobody could make it. In fact, I went to college and graduated high school in 83. I was probably in Dover in 85, 86. And one of my roommates never been to Rehoboth his whole life. He was from Milford, never been to Nicola Pizza. And I said, I never went off Rehoboth Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
He said, I've never been off Rehoboth Avenue. So you got that, and that's coming from a local.
Yeah.
So you figure the tourists really wouldn't go off Rehoboth Avenue, you know? So everybody was like, you're not going to make it, and this and that. And the lifeguards were a big part of it, because the lifeguards would come in, and they were great because they were free advertisement and they captured everybody, because probably that back then everyone went to Rehoboth to go to the boardwalk and go to the beach.
Right.
It's probably 90% that did that because there was nothing else to do.
Sure. Yeah.
There was nothing,
Yeah.
Now you might, I don't know, I'm not a tourist, obviously, but, there's probably people that come down here for a week and they only go to Rehoboth or the boardwalk maybe once a week.
Yeah.
You stay out on Route 24 or wherever you stay, there's so much outside. Of course, the outlets, they weren't even nothing in anybody's eye at the time. Nobody knew the outlets were coming. So back then, that's all you did. So the lifeguards had a captured audience, and I think my father was smart enough to know that, you know, so he gave them the 15% lifeguard discount, which was huge to those guys because those guys, that was a part-time job for them. They were most of them were University of Delaware, or University of Maryland, whatever. And so he had it perfect. So they would come there and give them the 15% off, which we actually still do to this day. 54 years later, we still give all the lifeguards a 15% discount, which is awesome,
Yeah.
So, anyway, one day, can I go into the Nicoboli?
We should.
Well, that is
what we're here for. We're here to
the story
pump this place up. Right?
We need to pump it up.
That's all I need. About a month ago, we're packed in there on a Friday night. Right, the place is busy. I'm even cleaning tables. Some guy says to me, he said, "Why don't you open up one in Georgetown?" I looked around. I said, "That's all I need. Perfect. Let's open one up there so I can go back and forth up and down Route 9 all day." But anyway,
so like I say, it is the Nicoboli is something we do need to talk about because it's kind of like the flagship product that you guys have.
It's what started it all. The pizza started it all. I get it, but the Nicoboli came, and the name came in 75, 76. My father and me always, we argue. We don't argue, but we don't agree on all that. You got to realize at the time I was 12, 13, 14.
Right.
I remember a lot. God, got a good memory with that stuff. And I think it was called the Stromboli, might even be called the Twist, at one time. But I can remember seeing the menu board that said Stromboli on it. I do remember that, So, he came up with it, So what happened there was a lot of the lifeguards came in and they were tired of eating the pizza, and things of that nature. And they just wanted some meat, They just wanted the meat, And that's how it was explained to us. They said, "Nick, we don't want a hamburger." He said, "Well, I got ground beef on my menu." He said, "Let me try to come up with something." So it actually, the from what he says, and he knows, obviously he did it. He says the first ones he started making with ketchup. He said because of the hamburger, you know, he said, I didn't think of this pizza sauce, you know, until late, maybe, you know, 3, 4, 6 months later. He said, but I used to make it with ketchup, you know, and he said, I'd put the, you know, ground beef, the cheese, you know, the ketchup on there. And he said, fold it up. And he said it was really crude at the time, obviously, you know. He said, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. So he made them. And next thing you know, the lifeguards really started liking them. And so did the employees, you know. We told this story, I think, in a documentary. He one of his employees one day, they liked it so much, he said, hey, I'm going to bring my family in this weekend. What would you charge me? Because it wasn't on the menu, you know. He said, what would you charge me for this? So the joke was, knowing my father, you know, he said, well, 50 cents. You know, so they all agreed. My mom and him agreed 50 cents. So they charged him 50 cents, you know. Well, I think the next weekend, like 4 or 5 more people came in and started ordering. So it went right to $1. You know, so the big joke was my mom wanted 75 cents. You know what I mean? Oh, Nick, you can't double it. You know what I mean? It's got to be 75 cents. You know what I mean? Oh, no, it's $1.
It's $1.
So it was $1, you know. So it started out $1. And then,
crazy though, right?
Oh, just nuts, crazy. I mean, you can't do it now. You can't do it now. This never would have happened in 2025. But anyway, they eventually he changed it to pizza sauce and charged everybody $1. You know, and then the lifeguards were the ones that really started it. They pumped it up. You know, they're on the beach. You know, all the girls but they would tell everybody, you know, hey, there's a new product. You know, new restaurant in Rehoboth here, and it's got a new product called a Nicoboli. Go down and try it. You know, next thing you know, Jesus God, he was just booming. The joke is, you know, he ran it when he first started at 17 seats, not 17 tables, 17 seats.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for him, you know. So I joke with him all the time. I said, oh, yeah, you mean you're great manager, you ran the restaurant with 17 seats. You got 500 seats now, you know what I mean? But 17 is a lot. You know, you did great, but nothing against the man. Obviously, he's done wonderful.
Yeah.
But it
did get expanded. I mean, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Expanded. You know, then we had Nicola's there at 8 North First Street. It actually went through 3 expansions at the time. And one little funny one that we can bring up here, I don't know any of their names, but one of the expansions was a house was being rented where the church is right now in Rehoboth. Cannot remember the name of the church, been there forever, but anyway, Baltimore Avenue there. It actually now it's not the church, it's where they have the plays and all that stuff. That was a house. Okay, before it was a church, that was a house. There was a house there. And my father needed that property to expand the kitchen. So the kitchen was going to actually go right up to that property. And it literally, when we left there, that I'm sure it's still like that, but you couldn't even get a body back there. It was so close to that property. And the gentleman did not want to move the house. He didn't want to move out. He had nowhere to go. But my dad bought it, you know what I mean, from the people that had it before, you know, and he said, oh, wait a minute, you got to move out. So it was a big ordeal. I can remember, God, I was probably 11, maybe 10, 11, probably 11. Wow. And I remember these guys came over to my dad's house, you know, and they said, we're moving him the hell out if he likes it or not. I would assume the police got involved. But obviously my father was right, you know. He owned the property, you know. He's like, hey, you know, you had the property till whatever, let's just say January 1, you know, or December 31st. And here it is January 5th, and this guy's still in there. My dad's like, hey, we got to expand. You know, he said, I got a business to run now. You know, I'm getting up there, you know, from 17 seats to 50, you know, 100, you know, this is big time, you know. But I'll never forget, you know, the guys came over in their trucks and we all trucked over there. I sat out, I was outside the truck and I remember there was a lot of, you know, screaming going on, you know, obviously back and forth, you know, no fist fights or anything, but he got out of there and then it expanded. That, you know, that's one of the expansions. And then, like I said, there was 2 other expansions, but God, there used to be a little alleyway. Me and my wife went out to dinner the other day. We rode around there, and I looked at the 71 Rehoboth Avenue, which is another restaurant right now. But that alleyway down there, back back in the day, we used to park 5 cars back there. So my father and 2 or 3 employees would actually drive down that alley and park their cars behind the Nicola Pizza. I mean, now you can't even hardly get a trash bin down that alley.
Yeah.
But back then you could,
Right.
you know, and he had a little spot back there. In fact, at one time, I think he wanted to charge people in the summertime to park there.
There you go.
But somebody got into an accident back there because it was so tight. My mom stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. We're going to have accidents all the time.
Right.
So we didn't do that. That's one venture we didn't do. But, you know, that was it. You know, then, of course, when the outlets came, I always tell everybody, if you weren't here, when the outlets came in 78, 79, that was our first major jump in this area.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
everybody will tell you that was around back then. You know,
Yeah,
it was a Memorial Day to Labor Day. You know, like back in the early 70s up until 78, 79, maybe even 80, you would open up Memorial Day at 5 o'clock and you would close Labor Day at 5 o'clock. It was nothing else. Nothing else. You had the Seahorse restaurant, which was on the corner of 4th Street, okay, right across from Remax. That was a restaurant that was there, and you had the Avenue Inn. I don't know about the Country Squire, which the Country Squire was the gentleman that used to own the Starbird, Chip Hearn and them had the Country Squire. They might have been open all year long. I don't know that answer. You know what I mean? But that was it. Everybody else shut down.
Yeah.
The town shut down. Now it doesn't get started until June. You know, the heaviness sometimes doesn't get started until June and can go through October. You know, the weather was just so much different back then. You know, everyone opened up. Grotto, he opened up. Memorial Day at 5 o'clock, closed Labor Day. He was a teacher also. My dad was a teacher. Dominic was a teacher up in Pennsylvania, and that's what they would do. That was their summer jobs, you know. And that's how that started, you know. And then, like I said, the outlets in 78, 79 then really started, you know, that was the first big jump. You know, that was a big jump in this area for everybody, you know, because then they started driving down from Jersey, you know, started driving down from Pennsylvania, you know, hey, we got to get to these outlets, you know what I mean? And then, of course, you started a little bit of building outside of Rehoboth, but Rehoboth was really still the place. You know, that was the place, you know. So then I think you went a little longer, and then at one time we would close down for a month, you know, let everybody off for a month, and then it went to 2 weeks, and then eventually it went to, even when we were in Rehoboth, it went to 365 days a year, except for Thanksgiving and Christmas, obviously.
Sure.
But amazing.
So the original location, though, is, you know, I always remember my first visit to Nicola's on the original location. I remember the train going around the woods. It was a lot of charm. I'm sure, and I know you guys, and there's obviously so many stories you could tell. I know I could keep you here for a long, long time. And then you expanded onto the avenue.
That's correct.
And had 2 locations.
Correct.
How was that? How did that come about? Like, I'm intrigued to know about that, and then we'll go on to the final chapter, the next chapter.
Yeah. So in 2010 is when that whole ordeal went down. And we owned the building in 1983. The store on Rehoboth Avenue was actually built. Okay, so my father built that in 1983. Of course, I'm just graduating from high school. I was in some of the meetings, but really I'm not into it at the time. I don't want to. I wasn't one of those kids. For where I am at the age of 60, I was worked at those ages of 10 through 17 or 18. But I wasn't involved in the business in that aspect of it. You know, I'm sure he brought it up to us at the dinner table. Hey, you know, I want to expand. You know, I want to build a building, not expand. I want to build a building on Rehoboth Avenue. I would imagine my mom stepped in and said, it's never going to be in Nicola's. You know, just knowing my mom, that's fine. You can build it, but it's never going to be in Nicola's. That's how she was. She just loved the one location.
Sure.
Just loved the one location. And I get it. They made a ton of money there.
Yeah.
And it was tolerable. It was chaotic, but we knew the business from that end of it,
Yeah.
So he rented it out from 83 until 2009, and then their rents were due. And I remember we talked, and he says, "What do you think about putting up a second location right there on Rehoboth Avenue at that building there?" I said, "That'd be perfect." I said, "I think we could do it." Our original plan was to connect it,
Oh,
okay?
wow.
Yeah, it was going to be connected. So, wish I knew the law, but God,
sometimes it's better when you don't.
yeah, sometimes it's better when you don't. But in the probably, I would say early '90s, where the bookstore is right now, where Browseabout is, back in the 60s and 70s, that was at one time it was a movie theater way back.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it was not a movie theater, shut down. So what they did was they put a billiards downstairs, bowling. So you had bowling downstairs, no pool tables, but you had bowling. Okay. So you had bowling downstairs and roller skating upstairs. Okay, so that's what everyone did. You know what I mean? Everybody would go either bowl or you would go upstairs and ice or and roller skate, or you would do both. You know what I mean? And that was the big thing to do, you know. And came about maybe, I don't know, 88, maybe 80, 89, 90, let's just say 90 for shits and giggles. A place from Washington, D.C. came and took it over, and they sort of made it a nightclub.
Oh.
It was actually a nightclub in Rehoboth.
Wow.
I mean, this is it. You know,
Yeah.
It was a nightclub in Rehoboth. And I'll remember the name of it when I leave here. I cannot remember the name of it right now. I've been in that nightclub. It only opened up, I think it opened up like June or July, and it only stayed open for about maybe 30 or 40 days. They finally they passed a bill because they would have poles and they'd have dancers, you know, and they'd have guy dancers and girl dancers. And I think Rehoboth at the time, you know, said, you know, no, we don't want to. We're a family. You know, back then it was actually called the nation's summer capital for families. You know? It was a family place. You know, and then all of a sudden you got a nightclub and everybody was like, oh no. So it didn't stay open long. It only stayed open probably, like I said, maybe 60 days, 45 days or so. And they actually passed a law on, you know, how they have the meetings on Friday nights, you know, once a month or whatever it is in Rehoboth. One of the Friday nights it got brought up and they shut it down. They said, you know, we don't want that here, you know. So
how were you going to connect it? I still don't know how you're going to connect.
Yeah, what the heck was I going to do?
I can't imagine like how. I mean, I know they're kind of like this. Yeah. But how would you?
Oh, we were going to connect. Oh, going back to the connecting the Nicolas. That's why I said that. Yeah. So we were going to connect them. So out back of the, it's an L shape. It's an L shaped piece of property. Okay. So on 8 North First Street, it goes back and it goes back to the church there, and then it actually comes out like an L out to Rehoboth Avenue. Yep. So there's only, to this day, right now, there's only about 5 feet. So if you walk out of the back door of 8 North First Street, you make 5 steps, you're in the 71 Rehoboth Avenue. And like I said, now one person does own that property. I don't own it anymore. And I know 2 restaurants are there. Yeah. I don't know how they worked it out between Monty and the other group, how they worked all that out. I have no idea. I wasn't worried about that. I knew at that time I was gone. You guys figured that out. But we were going to connect the 2 in the back. Yeah. Okay, so we were going to connect the 2. At one time, we were actually going to build a tunnel because my idea was we would use, so 8 North First Street was there. We're busy as you know what, you know, through the 90s and all that. But we would use the basement. Both of those places have a basement. 8 North First Street has a full basement, and the store on the avenue has a full basement. People don't know that.
No.
Dolly's has a 3/4 basement. Dolly's on Rehoboth Avenue.
Which is right next to the beach, right next to the water.
Dolly's anymore. I get that. But when I know it, it's Dolly's. It has a 3/4 basement, and so does Grotto, which is on the other side of Rehoboth Avenue on the beach. They're on the beach. All that beach gets, you know, tore up or whatever, but they actually have a basement. They say they don't get any water. At least back then, I've heard they didn't get any water. I don't even know if they still use them. I don't know that. But way back, they had basements. You know. And so we were going to connect the 2, and we kept going. We got a lawyer and everything, and they shot us down. They said you can't do it. You know, you can't connect the 2. So I'll never forget. One day I came to my dad. I said, well, instead of connecting the 2, let's just run with 2 restaurants. You know, I said, it's going to be a pain in the ass, but I said, let's just run with it. You know, we can do it. You know, I was young, you know, what, 25 years ago. I was 40, then I was ready, I mean, that's nothing, what I mean? Let's do it. So we just made 2 restaurants out of it is what we did, So we had the, of course, we had the 8 North First Street was called Nicola Pizza. We named the other one Nicola Pizza on the Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay. So it made it perfect, And you ran the 2 restaurants. Well, that's all great, when you're young and all that. Then you start getting a little older and you don't realize it's a pain in the rear end, because you got one restaurant over here, then you take a couple steps and you got another restaurant, then you have another restaurant on top of it. I'm like, man, this is.
It was the second one was big. I mean, it was
the second one was big, second one had an upstairs and a downstairs, had an elevator, had everything, and it was going, and it got on me. It drained me. That drained me. That drained me more than even doing this new restaurant. And it's amazing because this new restaurant, 17,000 square feet.
Massive.
It's a factory, what I mean? But that drained me more, because I would go back and forth, and I'm like, well, what the hell are they doing up top? You know what I mean? Above me, I don't have any cameras. What's my cooks doing? Now, my cooks are great. That's fine. But what are the customers doing? Are they getting their food?
Yeah.
So, man, we're back and forth. It was just going crazy, So can I go into the the new one? Are we almost to that
we
point?
do. No, well, I think the big thing about it was, when we spoke to, we've had Scott Camera here, and obviously he had, I would say, he was before you guys did in terms of going big on Route 1. Like there was always a thing of back in the day, of you have to be in Rehoboth. Right,
have to be in Rehoboth.
You had to be in Rehoboth.
If you're not in Rehoboth, you're not making it.
You're not making it.
No,
all right, and I feel like say Scott and definitely Thompson Island and
McDonald's was on Rehoboth Avenue for 10 years.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, Rehoboth, right across the street from me. So at the corner there, it's a clothing store now. But McDonald's was there for 10 years, from 1990 until 2000. I think that's the years. I might be wrong out there, Mike, but I think it was 90 to 2000. And then what happened was that story. That's a crazy story. He was paying them $100,000 a year in rent. Okay, and here I am telling numbers. He was paying 100, and they jacked it up to 150,000 in the 11th year. And Mike said, "I'm not paying you the 150,000. I'm not doing it." And then he moved out to where it is on Route 24 right now. But it was in Rehoboth. That store was in Rehoboth. That might have been Mike's. The son, Mike.
Yeah.
It might have been
Mike Mioli, right?
Mike Mioli.
Yeah.
That could have been his first store. I don't know that. I don't want to talk, and I don't know the answer. But you're talking 90. What's that? That's 35 years ago or so. That might have been the first store that he ran, and it was right there in Rehoboth Beach, and it ran for 10 years.
So, like I say, everybody was in Rehoboth.
Had to be.
And like I say, going out on Route 1 was kind of seen as a backtrack in that regards. And then, and then there was I felt like a wave of people who did it. Right. And now, you guys did it. So you uprooted 2 stores and got out of Rehoboth.
Correct.
And went to Lewis. Almost like if we were in London, it would be like if you going from one football team to another football team, like you were going against the rules. You don't go from Rehoboth to Lewis.
No question.
You're
Adam, you're correct.
So how
first time anyone said that in this studio? That's never been said before.
Make sure you tape that one.
Yeah. So it was a big move.
Yeah, that was a big move.
How does that even come about for you guys?
So we've been there 3 years. So about 4 years ago, so we're in 25. I'd say 2021. I have no idea if I had a nightmare, a dream. You can call it whatever. I don't even know if I mentioned it to my wife. I'm sure I did. Obviously, I mentioned it to my wife. But I'm like, I said, I think I'm going to talk to my father. I said, I think we can move out to Route 1. I really do. I think now's the chance. So what happened with that was, and going back, so in 1996, no one wanted to be out on Route 1.
No,
nobody in 1996. Yeah, no. So my father, at the end of end of 96, he had really a lot of money accumulating, you know what I mean? I'm sure he had money in the stock market or whatever, I'm not talking business here.
Yeah.
But a piece of property, 7 acres, little less than 7 acres, Joe Reed came to him and said, "Hey, there's a property out on Route 1 that's available. And he said, it's a good buy, you know, it's a very good buy. You know, he said, it's cheap, you know, it's 7 acres out there.
Yeah.
So my dad and me and Joe trucked out there, you know what I mean? And, we're like, yeah, you know, this seems good. It's pretty far out, you know, but,
so it was all of this?
Yeah.
Or did it come into some of the other areas?
Yeah, so it was just the park, just that area. Yeah. Just that area.
Yeah.
Okay, that was what was available. Okay, because you're right.
Yeah.
PNC. You see Edward Jones PNC?
Yeah.
Can you veer out just a little bit so I can see it all? That's what he bought. No. He bought to the right first.
Oh, okay.
That was the little 6 acres. Okay. Where Nicola Pizza is now, that was storage units, Wright's mini storage. Everybody remembers the orange doors.
Yeah.
They had 330 of them. I can tell you exactly how many they were. But to the right was an empty building. In fact, the cable guy that built Dover Downs. Oh my God, I remember his name when I leave too. He's probably 10th richest man in the world. Well, he died. His wife now is like the 10th richest woman in the world. Cable. He started. He went to Atlanta. He went to college in Georgia. Drove up here in the 60s, and he started a used car dealership on that property.
Oh wow!
Where the PNC Bank is right now.
Okay.
And they went bankrupt. They couldn't make it. You know, now he's the 10th, probably 10th, 12th, 15th richest man in the world. And he went bankrupt there. So that's how the property came really cheap.
Okay.
You know? So Joe Reed knew that.
Right.
Joe Reed knew that.
Yep.
So Joe said, you know, what do you think about buying it? So we bought it. Of course, it's just raw land at the time. You know?
Yeah.
So we were dealing with PNC. So that worked out good. So we went to PNC. You know, my dad went to PNC. PNC said, yeah, you know, I could go out there. Let's do this. You know, I think we could put one out on the highway. You know, we got one in Rehoboth. You know, we do have one in downtown Lewis, but this is on the highway. They were really my father. Not the people were out there before that, but the big businesses. PNC was one of the first ones. I mean, they okayed that, and they were in Pennsylvania where they are now. They weren't in this area, you know. But he convinced the people in this area saw that, you know, and said, yeah, let's do it. So PNC came and they built a 10,000 square feet building on that property. And then years after that, Edward Jones came, and then that's the Hilton Hotel. That's our Hilton, which is if you flare back, and that's a little story there. I could go into a little bit about that. So about maybe 10 or so years ago, we had Marriott. We had a meeting with Marriott. And we said, hey, we got a piece of property, you know, on Route 1 out there. And what do you think about putting a hotel out there? I swear to goodness to you, we're at a table, big table. You know what I mean?
Puts our table to shame. It's a terrible table.
We're big jobs. Marriott, you know, big jobs. You know, the guy's sitting there, you know, we're all sitting there. We said, what do you think about putting a hotel? Oh, that's way too far out. No,
that's too far out.
Way too far out. We'll never pass that. That'll never pass. We're not going to do that. Why don't you put up hospital, for doctors and everything, and a building, a 30,000 square feet building for doctor's office and everything. You know, we're like, we're not going to do that. You know.
Thanks for the suggestion,
anyway,
though.
Now there's 2 hotels there.
That was a big wave.
And that guy still has a job. Nothing against him. I asked somebody about 5 years ago. Said, still working for Marriott? He is. I said, well, he shouldn't be because he really missed that opportunity. But thank goodness it's a Hilton, which I'm a lot happier now that it's a Hilton. But anyway, so the Hilton was built, and it opened up in 2000, I think, 1999, 2000. It was a COVID build, so it went through, you know, craziness.
Sure.
But those two hotels coming up also were big things in Lewis in terms of like there was a huge. Terms of, like before that. New hotels in Lewis.
No, not many. The Marriott was before us, you know, but only about a year or so. The one, you know, the one on the highway, down the road on the highway. There. But not many. And the Marriott guy said it's too far out. Literally, that's at the meeting we had, you know. So whatever. So then Hilton built it, you know. So once Hilton built it, you know, I'm like, man, God, it'd be nice, you know, we're right here, you know, be a one complex, you know, like I said at the time, you know, I'm 55 now, I'm 60 now, but at the time I'm thinking about this, I'm 55, which 55 is still young, but I'm like, you know, I don't run the Hilton, but you know, I got my businesses in Rehoboth. I got a business out here, which is 110 rooms. One day, I'll never forget it. There was an emergency, and I had to go to the hotel. And I don't know if it was June or July. I don't think it was August. But it literally, I was going from my restaurant about 3.5 hours and stuck in traffic for maybe an hour and a half. But just tell me I wasn't going crazy. You know what I mean? They call me out there. I get out there, and then I got to go back. And all of a sudden, I'm stuck like a tourist going back to my restaurant. I bet you I was on the phone. You knew better. I was on the phone with my general manager probably the whole time. I have no idea what I was talking about, but I couldn't wait to get back to my store. You know, so, Jesus God, you know, I can't be doing this. I mean, it's going to drive me nuts. So one day, it opened at 22. So one day, probably in about the year 20, I had COVID, you know, and that's what it was. I'll blame it on COVID. I woke up and I said, you know what? I said, I'm Andrea, that's my wife. I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to see if my father would like to see if we would build out here on Route 1, if we could find a piece of property. Now, the mini storage was there for a long time. Bob Wright, he had that for a long time. He started with a car dealership where the Del Dot is now on the corner there near Lowe's. That was Wright's Chrysler car dealership back in the 70s, 80s, maybe even early 90s. He was a builder from Wilmington, really a smart man, very, very smart individual. He's passed away now, but he was a very smart businessman. So he opened up the Wright's mini storage there, you know. So, you know, we would go over there, you know, we owned that. You know, the hotel was being built. So, of course, we were trying to get cozy with our neighbors, you know what I mean? I didn't know the gentleman at all. And the 3 daughters, I didn't know him. The one daughter worked for us way back in the 70s, but I didn't know her real well. So we'd go in there, you know, me and my father, and say, hey, would you ever sell it? They said, well, it is for sale. You know, we would sell it, but with the right price, you know. So the right price to us was always, and not being smart, it was always a couple $100,000 more than we wanted to pay, you know what I mean? And like, just can't, it's not going to work, you know what I mean, this and that. So they finally put it on the market for sale, and we thought it was going to sell. The problem with where Nicola Pizza's restaurant is right now, it's not a problem at all, but it was great for us. That's only 100-foot front. So if you turn in, see, we had the turn lane already where it says Edward Jones Financial. I know you guys on the radio can't see that. But that turn lane was already there for us. So you already had the ingress and egress for the bank was already there. Well, that is only 100-foot front. It's the only 100-foot front on all of Route 1. Everything else is either 150 or 200. 85% of the property on Route 1 is a 200-foot front. There's probably 25 or 30, whatever the rest of it is, 150 foot. It's the only piece of property. So nobody could make it work for them, because once you tear down those storage units, then you have to go under new guidelines for Sussex County. You know what I mean? So they had to be 80 foot back. You could only do this, do that. You know what I mean? So I'll never forget the one day that I thought it sold. It was not a good day in my life. It turned out to be great. But I remember they were flying up from Georgia. Somebody was flying up from Atlanta, and the girls thought, they said, he's definitely going to take it. But when he saw it, and when they did their homework, they called me and they said he couldn't do anything with it. I sort of then knew, you know, I'm like, you know, gosh, we could maybe really work out a deal now, you know. So I went to him, you know, Bob passed away, and I went to the girls, you know, and I just said, you know, listen, it's got the 100-foot front. Obviously, you're realizing that's sort of an issue there. It'd be perfect for me. I'll never forget the girl said, she goes, Bob really loved you guys, and he wants this to be a Nicola Pizza. And then I knew, I'm like, this is great. We're going to make a deal here, you know. So, of course, going back, I'll rewind just a little bit. I bring it up to my father on that day. Remember, I had COVID. I go in, I'm joking with the COVID. But I go in, you know, and I say, hey, Dad. I said, I don't know, hey, Dad. I said, but let's talk, you know. I said, I think it's time, with the hotel out there and with all that going on, with how Route 1's moving, I think we should get out of Rehoboth, sell both of these, and let's move out on the highway, you know. I don't know if he took a pen or what he took. Am I allowed to cuss? No.
He'll bleep you. He'll bleep you.
You get the fuck out of my office. Points to the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I get it.
Let me know how you really feel.
He doesn't want to do it. So go on. I work, obviously, keep working. About 5 days later, he calls me up one morning. He said, "What time are you coming to work today?" I said, "I'll be there at the usual time, 8:30, whatever. I'll be there." He says, "Let's talk about what you want to do, So I said, "Fine, So we talked about it. And I said, "Listen," I said, "I'm 55, I might have been 56, whatever the heck I was. I'm not getting any younger." I said, "You got the hotel out there." I said, "Here, it's just a pain in the rear end. People don't realize one restaurant in Rehoboth, downtown Rehoboth, it's very hard to make it.
Sure.
Those guys that do that, it's great that they do that. It's hard, It's Rehoboth's great for the 4 months out of the year, great, phenomenal. But the other 8 months, you really got to
work. You got to grind.
You got to grind it out, and it's an everyday grind. Is it snowing? Is it windy?
Yeah.
Is the sun out? What way is the wind blowing? You got one side of Rehoboth Avenue that's 30 degrees. You know what I mean? The north side, and the south side is 40, 45 to 50 degrees. That's a true story. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
You go down one side of the avenue, it's 15 degrees colder than the other one,
Sure.
They're just thinking about that constantly. And that's what I was thinking about. But I had 2 restaurants.
Right.
And I had people that I hired that worked in the old restaurant that never worked in the new restaurant. So I'm thinking about their families. You know what I mean? I'm like, how in the heck am I going to do this? I got people depending on me.
Sure,
They're depending on me. Big family. It's a huge family. I had 65. At the time, I probably had 70 full-time employees that all had families.
Sure.
And some of them, I was the income. Nicola's was the income for them, Their husbands stayed home with the kids or their wives, whatever it was, So I'm like, Jesus, God, what the heck we done? I said, it's just not, it'd be so much better, just so much better. So he called me in and I talked to him. I told him that story. Probably right there is the story I told him. I can't remember, but it was probably something like that,
Yeah.
I said, "Dad, our employees, I had one guy coming from Milford. His hours were getting cut. I'll never forget. He said to me, he says, "What else can I do?" You know what I mean? I'm like, "Conseco, God, you've opened my restaurant." He said, "Nick, it doesn't cost me." He said, "But you send me home at 12 o'clock every day." You know what I mean? I'm like, Jesus, I feel bad.
Oh, yeah.
Right. These people depend on me.
Yeah.
So my father said, "Let's look into it," So of course we looked into it, not quick, the next day.
Yeah.
We didn't wait. So of course we go out there and they said, the 3 sisters said, "Nick, we'll sell it to you, this and that." And then it was game on from there. And then that was great, So then of course, and I got to bring it up to all my employees,
Yeah.
That was really weird because it's amazing. I swear to goodness that the whole, from him selling pizza out of the house to this restaurant right here, you could do a movie.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not here blowing horns.
No.
I'm not that.
I know we won't get an inch of all the stories that
I'm
you
not
have.
that kind of guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just was amazing.
Yeah.
He finally says yes. So now I got to talk all my managers into it, all my help. But the good thing, which I knew, all my help lived out here. Nobody lived in downtown Rehoboth.
Right.
I had one employee that rented a house from me in downtown Rehoboth.
Yeah.
He was the only one. Everybody else was here. So I knew it was a pain in the rear end for them to come to Rehoboth and work, Sure. So I'll never forget, I went to them one by one. I didn't do it in a group. I went to them one by one and I called them by hierarchy,
Yeah.
I've had Pat Mutchler and her husband at the time worked for me since 1977. Pat's still there, so they were the first ones I brought in, and I told him, I said, "Pat Byron," I said, "I just want to tell you something." I said, "We're really thinking about moving the restaurant out on the highway next to Arby's, And I'll never forget both of them at the same time. Of course, their mouths dropped. And I said, "I want to tell you one thing. I guarantee you that your family is going to make more money out there than you are in here." I said, and just the headaches of it's going to have a parking spot for you. You know what I mean? You can park. You don't have to put up with this, and you're going to make more money. They both said no problem at all. Every employee that worked for me, all 65 of them, said, "Nick, we'll follow you. Do whatever it is,
That's great.
So that made it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, then you got to go through shutting down the 2 restaurants.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I probably made some. I never made a mistake. I don't think me and Kelly, I don't think our management team, I can honestly tell you, I don't think we made too many mistakes with it. But the last summer there, I did just takeout out of the one store.
On the original.
Oh, the original store. I just did takeout.
Yeah.
You know, and they were all saying to me, you know, what are you doing? You know, I said, well, we got to do it because we got to move, you know. So we had from Labor Day, which I think that year was like the September 5th or September 6th. It wasn't real late, but it wasn't like September 1st.
Right. Sure.
Until September 30th, we had to move both restaurants with 52 at the time years of junk in it. And we had to move it out to this restaurant because I had a big chunk of money that I had to pay somebody if I didn't make it out by October 1st.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, I told myself, I don't care if we got to work 50 hours in a row, 3 days in a row. We're going to be like the deadliest catch. Instead of catching king crab for 30 hours in a row, we're going to be moving the cola pizza for 30 hours in a row.
Well, I was waiting to hear like, oh, we have all these years of memorabilia, we have all these years of nostalgia, but we have all that junk.
Yeah,
I love it.
We had all the memorabilia too. But we also had a lot of junk, and so I'll never forget this guy Bob, United Movers from Salisbury. I didn't even know the guy. Mm-hmm. I'm working one day and somebody says, hey, some guy walked by the takeout counter and literally handed this business card and said, whatever you do, you give this to Nick Jr. And it was a United Moving Company, you know. So I didn't need him right at the time, but he knew, he heard the news, you know, and jumped on it.
Yeah.
So I said, man, somebody to do that, you know, he's going to move me, you know. So, you know, probably a week or two later went by. We started gathering up, you know, what we were going to do. I called Bob and I said, Bob, he said, Nick, we'll have you moved. I said, well, I got a lot of my help, you know what I mean? We'll help. I said, we got trucks, you know, and everything. I said, you know, you'll do the heavy lifting of all. It was 13 ovens, you know what I mean?
Wow, everything went.
Everything went. I even took the dishwashers. I left Monty. I don't think I left Monty anything. Monty, I'm sorry about that. He might have got a baker's table. The guys on the avenue got like 2 baker's tables. They did pretty good. You know, of course they paid me for it, but they got a little bit more. Monty didn't get nothing. Nothing against Monty.
Monty's okay. I think Monty's okay.
You know, Mom wasn't worried about Monty. I think he could do whatever he wanted with the baker's table. But the guys on the avenue, I think they got 2. Everything else we took. You know, we took it all. So then, of course, you gotta go with the builder. You know, when you can move stuff in. I swear to goodness, from that first meeting I had with my father, that he cussed me out. He cussed me out, but said, "Get the heck out of my office." I don't think we argued, me, my father, or my management team never argued, probably until maybe the first or 2 days of the opening. And of course, you always got that.
Stress.
You know,
sure.
I mean? The stress level of that, you know. But that whole time, nobody argued or anything. I did have to get another moving company. I got Spencer Birmingham of, you know, everybody knows Spencer.
Everybody knows
Spencer for hire. He's a buddy of mine. He went to high school with me. I called him probably 3 weeks into it or 2 weeks into it. I said, Spencer, you just got to help me. I said, this moving company's going to do it. I said, but I need help, you know. So he brought all his guys down and we trucked it up. And I swear to goodness, we met every day, probably at 7 a.m. And we probably moved until 7, 8 o'clock at night. Okay. But the great thing about it was, I don't know, was there 30 days in September? I do believe we actually were done on the 29th or whatever. Not the last day I had to get out, we'll say, was September 30th. We were actually done the 29th around noon. So we were done actually a day ahead of time. And I'll never forget the gentleman that bought the building from me. I handed him the key, and I know what he said to me. He didn't say it to me, but I know what he was thinking. I cannot believe that I'm not taking any more money from you. His wife already had that money spent. Yeah, I guarantee you. When he looked at those 2 stores, he said, "There ain't no way in heck he's going to get this restaurant done in 25 days." You know what I mean? But damn if we didn't. That's awesome. That's awesome. Got it done in 25 days, and that was it. You know, we moved out there, and I'll let you talk. Let me just tell you. But one little thing, okay? So this is a good one. I don't want to forget this one. And we'll go back to you with your questions. But anyway, we opened up. We did a soft opening on like the 22nd or 23rd of October, and of that year of 22. And invited all our friends. In fact, actually, this is a good one to get out there. On the last day of the old store, which was September like 30th. Oh no, the day after Labor Day. I'm so sorry. On the day after Labor Day, I fed all my customers that I knew. I would tell them a month ahead of time. I said, hey, the last day that we're going to open here, we're not open in the summer here, but we're going to open the day after Labor Day for everybody and give free food out.
Nice.
So we did that, you know what I mean?
That's
so
crazy.
we did it for like 200-300 people showed up.
Wow.
We gave them, all free food, all the sodas that were left over, the beer, they were drinking beer at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what all is. We weren't drinking early, I promise you. But anyway, it was great, so that was great. So then we had the opening here, right? So just real quick. So we did the soft opening on the 22nd, then we opened up for real on the 23rd, on the 25th. And it was a Tuesday. So I said to everybody, we're just going to open like 12 to 6, just to get a feel of this, I knew it was going to be nuts, So we opened 12 to 6, and that day didn't go too bad, So of course you have all the meetings afterwards with the management team, So we all left probably at midnight that night, whatever. So we get back in the next day, and same thing. We're going to open like 12 to 6 or 1 to 10, whatever, 1 to 5, whatever it was. I can't remember. But of course, my help has been there forever. I got guys that have been there I hired in 83. My guy opened the store today. He's been there 28 years. But this one guy, Douglas, has probably been with me maybe like 23 years, 25 years. I don't know exact.
Sure.
But on the second day, we opened about maybe 5 or 6 o'clock. We were going to open till 6, but I'd say 5 o'clock. I looked at him, and his eyes, I swear to God, were so bug-eyed. And I said, are you okay? He said, no, we're not okay. I went to the front door, and I told the hostess, I said, lock the door. She said, what do you mean lock the door? She goes, we got an hour wait outside. I said, I don't give a hoot. We got an hour wait outside. We're locking this door. We're not serving anybody else. They will come back, I promise. Then we can go back in. I just wanted to throw that. I didn't want to forget that.
Sure, it's great.
That was big. You know what I mean? I looked at her face. She looked at me. She goes, are you serious? I said, it's locked. No, when they go out, unlock it. Don't let anybody in this restaurant. You know what I mean? And then it was that
crazy following.
Sarah. But anyway.
But how did it feel to leave Rehoboth? I mean, obviously you spent a long time there. I mean, and it was obviously, I would say the new restaurant is amazing. We'll talk about it in a sec. We've got a few stories. Actually, I've got a story that we need to talk about. But the move, now you have huge amount of parking. Which is massive. I feel like it's an
Adam favorite.
It is. It must have played a big part for you guys. I mean, like when you planned it, it is huge parking, which you guys need, and you still feel. But how was it leaving the original and the second building and just Rehoboth? Like it is. I don't know if people back home, the audience can like imagine. Literally is like turning your back a little bit in terms of leaving Rehoboth and going to Lewis. And it must have been very emotional for you.
Of course. Yeah. One of the first phone calls I made was Carol Everhart, Carol Everhart, the city, in charge of all the planning down there in Rehoboth, the Sea Witch and all that. You know? I made the phone call for her. I'll never forget it. I was in, I was delivering something around Christmas time back in Henlopen Acres there. And I was in a parking lot, and it was raining, just a little bit of drizzle, but I had some trees around. I said, I'm going to call Carol and break the news to her before the news gets broken, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I called her, and she's very emotional, I said, Carol, I said, I just got to tell you something that I've wanted to do for a couple years now. And I said, we're actually going to leave Rehoboth and go out on the highway. And obviously she was stunned, you know what I mean?
Sure, everybody was.
Yes,
it was massive news. Everybody, when the news, the rumor mill started going around.
He's never going to make it. He's making the big mistake of the year. They didn't even know my dad was living. If his mom and dad were living, oh my God, they got to be rolling in their grave, But I heard it all, but it was hard. It was hard. It wasn't easy.
Change.
The hardest one to leave obviously was the original one.
Sure.
I've never been in. Monty, about a week or so before Monty opened his new restaurant, I called him. I said, Monty, would you let me, he said, oh my God, Nick, come on in, so me and Kelly went in and we went through the old restaurant. I mean, we had a basement there. I mean, you don't know what happened in that basement. I can't even imagine the stories in that with me and my other employees, And so he let us in there. I've yet to ever, I never will go into 71 Rehoboth Avenue. I probably never, nothing against Monty's place. I'll never go back to that one, but I did it once just to see it.
Sure.
Very emotional. I mean, that was my life. At 10 years old, I used to sleep underneath the ovens because they couldn't afford a babysitter. So I would sleep underneath the ovens until like midnight, and then they would wake me up and take me. And then back then, you could run the boardwalk, no problems. Like now, so they would give me quarters, you know what I mean? I'd go up to Funland, and Playland and do all that, and then I would come back, and it'd be like 9 o'clock, and they're like, oh, get underneath the oven, you know what I mean? And it was warm there, obviously.
Sure.
And that's why I did it, but I would do that in the wintertime, too, and that's where I literally probably would say I was born a lot at 8 North 1st Street. I raised a lot of all my memories are there as a young kid. That's where I lived, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's where I lived. And I started working there when I was 10, so obviously I had all that, but very emotional. But I knew the rainbow at the other end was so much greater.
Nice.
It made it so much easier.
Right.
You know what I mean? It it just made it easier because it wasn't like, it was something I wanted to do. It wasn't like my father made me do it, or the GM, saying, let's move out on the highway, you know what I mean? Right. It was my idea, and I knew it would work, and I knew for my family, not the business side of it, but for my head, for everything, because like I said, running 2 restaurants in downtown Rehoboth, it's very hard, people. People don't realize, it was mentally draining. I loved it. I made a ton of money there. I had so much fun there. But going out on the highway at that other end of that rainbow, I knew there was a pot of gold for me. And not just the money aspect of it, because I made a ton of money, and I'm not bragging, a ton of money in Rehoboth. But I knew for my employees and for my customers and for me as a family, for my family, it was the best move to make.
Yeah.
I just knew it. I knew it was the best move to make. So, course, you had the tears, you had the, God, I'm handing over that key that day, I'm like, Jesus, God, the paper's there, they're taking pictures, I'm like, man, I'll never see this building again, which I grew up in for 50 some years. And it was tough, it was not easy. It was very tough. But like I said, it was, I wasn't pressured into doing it. It was my idea. And people will say to me, like, you got big balls and this and that. But I knew, I worked so many years in that business. And I'm a very strange owner, okay? Even in this restaurant, I probably spend 10 minutes. I'll be in my building for 12 hours a day. And I bet you I spend 15 minutes in my office. I'm downstairs. I'm not working and walking around. I got a chair I sit in, you know what I mean? But I'm there, and I correspond with all the customers, I correspond, obviously, with all my employees, all the time. I still do the ordering from Cisco. I'm still very involved in the restaurant. But I did that in Rehoboth, too, but I worked it, you know what I mean? So I'd work in the kitchen, and then it would slow down. I'd go out and talk to the people in my dining room, filthy. They're probably, they're like, Jesus. But back then, nobody cared. You know what I mean? They really still don't. They like that. I think they like that. Hey,
it's
the owner's
appreciated.
working. Jesus, God, look at all the sauce he has on. Little they know I just went and spilled salt and flour on me.
Is he eat lunch?
You know what I mean? So, I didn't really work hard. I'm joking. I wish I wasn't joking. I am. But anyway, so I knew, I'm like, they can't get to me. I heard all the stories. Hey, Nick, this one guy, they still come in my restaurant now. They'd be times on Friday night, he would drop his kids and wife off. They would wait outside for a half hour, whatever it was, come in, order the food, and he hadn't parked the car yet. And to get to Nicole, that happened many times. Many times. So he'd have to eat by himself. With his family was already done eating, Or the big one was, I called takeout, Nick, and Jesus, gosh, I had to take 2 people out of the house because we dropped one off. One went in to get the pizza, and the other one circled the avenue just to come up and pull up and pick up my buddy. You know, that happened. You know, not once. You know,
I'm sure that's a normal, practice.
That was a normal practice for people. You know, and I'm like, who the heck wants to do that? I mean, Jesus, God, Dad.
Well, it's a testament that they would do it.
Unbelievable. Yeah. When I tell this story too. I just actually told this story the other day. In the moving part of it, one day, it had to be the middle of September of 22. I had to get something at the old store, and they told me I had to do. Not they didn't tell me, but I knew they were doing whatever, and I'm like, oh, I'll go get it. You know. It's like a Wednesday afternoon. Obviously, it's probably 90 degrees outside. I'm riding around. You know, I said, F it. I'm going to illegal park. If I get a ticket, who gives a
right.
I said, but I couldn't. And then I said to myself, I sat there after I parked illegal, and I said to myself, this is what my customers did.
Sure.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's what my customers did.
Yeah.
I was going nuts. Drove around for 5 minutes looking for a parking spot. Freak that. I just got to be there for 10 minutes. I didn't get a ticket, thank goodness. But that's what they went through. You know, it's amazing. Totally amazing that they went through that.
Yeah.
So I knew, hey, we're out there. Gosh darn, it's easy. You know what I mean? We'll bring a big takeout window. We're going to make it as easy for everybody as possible.
Yeah, it's very easy. Like picking up takeout, you have the outdoor area, which is huge, and then obviously you have the main restaurant, which is great, big bar, lots of TVs, and so our story will evolve a little bit. I have a little bit of bad luck at your restaurant.
Okay,
I go there a lot to watch the Eagles.
Okay,
because you guys always have it on. You have a great, and I've never watched a game there, and they've won.
Oh, God. Please don't go the rest of the year. I can't believe I'm saying that.
So, it's okay. Most people do. Most people say that.
Please go next week.
Yeah.
Please go next week.
They looked good last night. Your team looked good last night.
That's
going to be a good game. You watch. That's going to be a good game. That's going to be a great game.
So that's one of my questions. Would you claim it as a particular? I mean, there's a lot of different teams up on the wall, but it's a big Sunday following out there. Is a big
huge Sunday following. In fact, my GM Kelly Munyon Small, she's been with me forever. My mom was a twin. It's my mom twin sister's daughter. She's awesome, but she's a big sports buff. She came to me about 3 months ago and she said, "Hey, Nick," she goes, "I was on the Eagles website ordering tickets, and she said they had something there where you can apply to be an Eagles bar." So we applied, and she's been on vacation for a week. In fact, it's on one of my notes at the store. Hey, are we legitimately an Eagles bar yet? You know?
Oh, wow.
But I think they'll publicize it on their website.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So people that are out of town, and will hit, Eagles or something, they'll say Eagles bar, and that's where to go watch the games.
Sure.
But no, I'm a big sports buff. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I love the Eagles, the Sixers. We've had Eagles season tickets since 1976. We still do. I give them away at the store. So every Sunday that the Eagles play at home,
that's right.
The week before, if you wear an Eagles jersey or have something Eagles on, we'll give you a little stub and we'll pick your name, and then you can go take our seats at the game, except obviously the playoff games. Last year I went to the NFC Championship game.
Me too.
There you go. What a game.
What a game.
So you're a huge Eagle fan.
I am.
That's awesome.
What's their record again this year right now?
They're 8-2.
8-2. So everybody knows. The 2 Sundays that Adam spent and Nicolas, they lost. And that's actual fact. That's a fact. That's a fact.
When
you see him,
it was so funny. So there's the three of us, me, Frank, and a guy Bob. Actually, Bob, who married Marina.
Bob Decker, who's married to Julie Short now. Julie Decker.
Short's Marina. Anyway, so Frank couldn't make it, and the Eagles were playing, and Bob, and so it's like a running thing now. So, well, you want to go to Nicola's? And I was like, he's like baiting me because he knows I've never won there.
They're going to lose.
And I said, and it was against the Giants. This is his team. And I said, of course we'll go. We're playing the Giants. This is the time. This is the time where we're going to break the duck. Break the duck. And he was like, I said, look, at halftime, I said, we should go, Bob. Right? We should. No. Let's have another drink. Let's just stay. And I was like, I really wanted to watch the end by myself just to see if we could win. And he kept me there, and we lost. And
Giants played the best game of their year that year. That was their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So he's Adam. He's not allowed back.
Adam is Sundays. Yep, terrible. Terrible. And I can't wait. I can't wait.
But
So the restaurant is a good. Who designed it? How did you? Was you involved in the design?
Yeah, I was designed a lot in design, but I'm going to tell you who majority designed that restaurant was my father.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
My father designed that restaurant. I did the kitchen. Okay, I did the kitchen. And my father did we all did, you know what I mean? Everybody has a little bit of part of it.
Yeah.
But he really designed it. He's 89 to this day, obviously 89 today. So you're talking he was 85, you know, when he first started this, you know, and said, let's do it. And I said, let's do this. And he says, it's great. He said, we'll design it ourselves, you know. And I'll never forget the art and just the kitchen aspect of it. The architects thought I was crazy. Said, you're crazy. Why do you need all this? But I'm like, well, I got 13, 14 ovens and they're 5 feet apart. I didn't want them going down one wall. You know what I mean? So that story, that's another just a little skidbig here.
Yeah.
I'm fishing with a guy way back about 15 years ago. And he worked in Georgetown in DC for the summertime. I mean, for the wintertime, he worked at a restaurant. One day we're fishing. He says, Nick, he said, I'll tell you what I did. He said, I work for this restaurant. It's a big one like yours. He said, but what they do, their kitchen is two sides. One side has the ovens and in the middle, the dishwashers, and the other side's another kitchen. In the summertime, they shut down the one side of their kitchen because everybody's at the beach and they're not busy. But then when the kids come back to the University of Maryland and come back to school at Georgetown, he says they open it all back up. And I'm like, man, that's a great idea, you know. So when this kitchen came available, I said, hey, let's do the same thing, you know. We'll do the eat-in on one side and then do the takeout and the patio on the other side, you know. So it works out great. So that kitchen, when you go to that takeout and you look out that whole kitchen, that one side of the kitchen, all it does is takeout and the patio, okay, and the other side of the kitchen does all the dine-in, and it works out tremendously great. Oh my God. And now, you know, back then, you know, we used to write everything down by hand. In fact, this is a true story. I can't take an order at Nicola Pizza. I can take the credit card, but I don't know how to take an. I don't mind. Believe me, I know how to take an order. But the old school way, I write it down. Yeah. Well, these people don't write it down. They put everything into a computer. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. I'm not about to learn to do that at 60. So I told them, I said, what can I learn to help you guys? They said, well, obviously, you know how to take the cash, of course. Yeah. Learn how to take the credit cards. I said, I'll do that. That's perfect. That's a big help to you. They said, Nick, that's a big help. But it's weird now. I go back to takeout, and it'll be crazy busy, and the customers are looking at me. I actually try to talk to a customer to get away from it because I can't help them. I can't, literally, I cannot help. I don't know how to do it, you know? And I lived doing that for 40 years. That's what I used to do. Run back from the kitchen to takeout. Now I can still do the kitchen, but I can't do the takeout. But it's amazing now. They got a system that if you call in or you order online, it actually, if say you order a French fry and a spaghetti, it'll actually go to the French fry section of the restaurant or go to the spaghetti section of the restaurant. So it's not even crisscross. It's amazing how technology, who would ever think that? You know, so you order at Nicola's, you order a pizza, a nicoboli, a salad, wings, and French fries. Well, the salad's going to the salad table. So the guy in the kitchen doesn't even see that. That goes to a girl. The wings and fries go to the fry guy doing the fries, and the pizza goes to the guy making pizza in the nicoboli. It's amazing. All comes together somehow. I have no idea how it comes together in the end, and they hand it out. And thank goodness we've had an issue. They've been handing out not all the food, and I got all my help for the first time in a long time. I said, no. That customer orders a salad, French fries, and pizza. You make sure that there's a salad, pizza, and French fries in it. And I get it. It's a busy restaurant, but the little nicks and things we're still trying to clean up, obviously, you know. But my help does it all. They do. I do come up with a lot of ideas, and they run with the ideas, but they really, really do it, all of it. They do it all. It's just like my father 50 years ago couldn't open this restaurant like he is now. I couldn't open this restaurant now if it wasn't for my employees. I couldn't do this. This is crazy.
But we said we wanted to do a podcast. We can't do a podcast. Those guys on the other side, they're doing the podcast.
When you introduced me, you know what I mean? In fact, guys listening out there, you should have seen that at the beginning. These guys were trying to get the microphone straight. Now we had to call in 2 other guys to help. Just one. When this guy just sat there, but he had to be laughing laughing at himself. And then one guy, he even said, he said, well, I think we've done hundreds of these. Well, it didn't seem like we've done hundreds of these. So I don't feel bad that our takeout needs a little bit of improvement.
So I did want to bring one thing together, because it is evident when I go all the time, and you've mentioned it a few times, and it kind of, we always, like, when we do this podcast, we try and relate a little bit in terms of our family at Shell Brothers. I always say about Chris, about how we are a family. Like, say, we have a lot of people. I've been working with Shell Brothers for 15 years. As I always say, it's the longest job I've ever had.
Because it's
true. And there's other people who have been working even longer. But it is always evident when you go to your locations, but also now the final location, hopefully, in that regards, of you do feel like you are in a family-owned restaurant, which it is. But the staff in there are seen. The camaraderie and how people intermix with the customers, but also just with everybody else, locals, non-locals. It is a big family,
huge
business,
huge,
and I know you've touched
everything.
On it.
It's everything. You think about it, everything.
But you've got
the Shell Brothers couldn't do it without you guys.
Well, let's make sure we get that
from Nick Jr. himself. Yes, correct.
But nobody. They can't do it.
No, that's true. And I feel like you only build a company or business like that if you have good leaders.
Yeah, no question about it. My wife tells me, my wife does not work in my restaurant, but we'll be out and somebody will say, you got great help, which obviously I do. And I'll say, I said, oh my God, I got the best help ever. She says, you never say you are very good at what you do, though.
Right.
Because obviously you're hiring them, you're training them in a way.
But you're keeping them.
They see you work, and they stay.
People don't stay if they don't love it.
We opened up the new restaurant, I want to say, with, I think, 37. Full and part-timers, in the summer, there's 120 of us, okay? But let's just say now it went from 50, I think, when we had the stores on the Rehoboth, in downtown Rehoboth. I think there's like maybe 76 now, maybe 80 full-time employees. So say we hired 40, okay, when we first opened the store in 22. Yeah. 5 people have left from the 40 that it opened.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my God, I'm already spinning a wheel now. So I have all my help that came from the old store here. And all of a sudden we're 3 years into it. And I got 35 new employees that have been with me for 3 years now, which 3 years in the restaurant business.
That's big. That's big. Yeah.
And all of them don't look like they're going anywhere. You know what I mean? They're like, no, Nick, we're here. I always say when I hire you, I marry you. I say that all the time. I said, it's crazy how it is, but I love it because customers love that. Yeah. Like you said.
It's evident.
You didn't actually say it, but I knew what you meant. You come there, my help's having fun, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They seem like it's like anything else. Adam, if you guys didn't like what you were doing, this podcast wouldn't be anything like it is now.
Right.
You gotta like, and unfortunately, there's many people out there that don't like what they're doing. It's a shame. True. It's bad luck, good luck. It's just the way it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You guys all are fortunate to have a job that you love. I'm fortunate to have a job I love. I love it. You know what I mean? I love the job. It's a pain in the rear end, but I love it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that corresponds with the help, Sure. I had Alex Pyres. We did a fundraiser. It's a quick little story here. I had Alex Pyres in about a month ago, and we did a picture. It was a fundraiser for a community bank for a handicapped park that they're building. It was a great fundraiser. Jack from Community Bank was there. It was good. It worked out real well. Anyway, make a long story short, I was cleaning tables, helping my help. I do that all the time, And Alex came to me and he says, "That's amazing that you still do that, And I said, "Just natural. I not even think about it. You know what I mean? I see a table dirty. I don't care. I'll go clean it, because and I don't even think about, hey, the table's dirty. It'll get another customer in here. You know what I mean? I don't even think like that. I'm just trying to help my help out. And they like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
Like, if he can do that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then they go the extra mile.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They go of course, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
That's how we're made. That's how we think,
And we didn't even get onto, I know he's going to get onto some of the products you have, But we didn't get onto, and I know it was on our schedule, of how much you do for the community and for charity work, for fundraisers, for the Cape and Lopen, this team, that sports team. I know you guys do an awful lot. I know you guys got the Cornerstone Award, which is a big award in the area for restaurants in that regards.
Well, we can talk about it. I
don't want to skip over.
We could touch on the Dine to Donate, because I don't know too much about this, and I'd love for everyone to kind of know about it.
Yeah, so the Dine to Donate, that's another one of my great ideas. I just, I feel like
I'm talking to Adam.
We ran the restaurant, for at the new one on Lewis for like 2 years, and then we finally started getting it down, so we got it down, I'm like, guys, we can come up with some different ideas here. Like I got 25, today's Tuesday, so it's 25% off pasta. The old store, I had 50% off. I said, I can't do that, but let's do 25. We just started it last year, and then we're doing it this year on Thursdays, 25% Nicoboli, from 11 to 5. Last year was 11 to 3. Yeah. And then my GM came to me and says, Nick, why don't we go to 11 to 5? I said, perfect, And then the Dine and Donate, I told her, I said, let's come up with something. You know what I mean? I said, we can do it on a Monday or whenever you want to do it. And it's called Dine and Donate. We give 20% back to whatever charity it is. Sometimes tomorrow it's on Mondays. This is the second or third one we're doing special for a cancer survivor. We're doing it actually tomorrow for a girl around here that has cancer and having a lot of problems with her bills. So we're doing a Dine and Donate for her. That was one of my employees that actually works at the Tunnel Cancer Center, went to Kelly. And just said, hey, with Nick Jr., would he be interested? I know he's done it in the past, doing a Dine and Donate for someone, and we're doing it tomorrow. It's going to be huge tomorrow. Yeah. So from 5 to 9, if you come in, eat, drink, sit at the bar, not takeout, unfortunately. It's all eat in, but and everything 20% goes to her cause, to the cancer cause, and it's great. I'm glad I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad, guys. I mean, it's great. I love doing it. It's. Back in 1971, we wouldn't even think about doing that. We were keeping all the money we could. But now I can give back to the community. Awesome. And I was born and raised in this community.
You're a BB baby. It's a big thing.
It's
a big thing around here. BB baby.
I'm a native. I'm a BB baby. BB baby.
Now 3 times real fast. Go ahead.
But so I love giving back to the community. It's part of it. The community made me.
Yeah.
They made me, my help made me, I made me, and the community made me, and that's it. That's the way it is.
That's great. That's great. All right, go on.
Oh, no. I love the fact, like, I'm a big fan. We do a lot of cooking at home, a lot of family style dinners, and just the fact that you jar your sauce, you have your, what is it, like a Nicoboli kit?
Yeah, we have a Nicoboli. It's a case of Nicobolis, actually. That's okay. That's okay. It's a case. So there's 12. There's 12 Nicobolis, and you actually buy 11, and you get 12. They're half baked and frozen, and they come in if you put 2 men's shoe, very easy. If you put 2 boxes together, that's as big as the box is. It's not a real big box, not real heavy. It's obviously I sell a ton of them. My father came up with that idea way back. And the reason we did that back in the 70s, I cooked back then on the Sundays in the summertime when people were going back, back to D.C.
Sure.
I always say D.C., but D.C., Pennsylvania, wherever they're going back to, they would order like 20 or 30 of these things. Well, we had to make them plus make for the customers, you know what I mean? We were going nuts, you know what I mean? It was just crazy.
Everybody
and the customers would suffer, you know what I mean? Because somebody would come in and say, I want 30 Nicobolis, we got to make them because he's about to leave. So my father came up with the idea, said, why don't we half bake them and freeze them and make them ahead of time, And we like, man, it's a great idea. It's a phenomenal idea. So that's what we do. That's what we did. We still do that to this day. Yeah. Like right now we're making cases for Christmas. Yeah. So we made 50 yesterday. We'll try to make another 50 today just to build it up, for the Christmas holidays because I sell it. Thank goodness. Yeah. Like I sell a ton of them, Which is great. Yeah. And then he's got the Mama Nicola Sugo up here. So we spaghetti on our menu is a big item. We got baked ziti supreme, baked ziti with spinach, blah, 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 stuffed shell, whatever you want to go with. But the spaghetti, the sugo, we call it sugo, but it's spaghetti sauce. We actually make it there. We don't grow the tomatoes, obviously. So the tomatoes are in a can, but we put them in a big vat and we cook it up. We put our own recipe into it. Nice. You know what I mean?
There's something special about the sauce, isn't there? We talked about this. Isn't there something special about the sauce, about how it's got no oil?
No, we didn't talk about. Oh, well, I know it's a peanut-free environment.
The pizza sauce is totally fat-free.
That's right.
That's not fat-free though. So let's get that straight. It's not real fat. It's not real fattening, but it does have some beef essence in it.
Yeah.
For flavor. I give it for flavor.
I knew there was something
to my spaghetti sauce, but my dough and sauce is fat-free.
Yeah,
now I'm not saying that if you eat with the cheese and all that, you're not going to gain weight.
So I can't go on an all summer Nicoboli diet.
We're not doing a Subway segment here. But anyway, it's fat free. Now the spaghetti sauce, the Mama Nicola Sugo, is not fat free. But we also sell that by the case, and then we have pails of it. The gift pail, that's the big one.
That's
like
cool.
Right now, the girl's in there making 20 gift pails now. She'll probably make up like 100 or 150 between now and Christmas. They'll sell, and it's easy. It's 3 jars of our spaghetti sauce. It's a spaghetti fork. It's a pound of pasta, and it's got a checkcloth napkin in it, and it's all wrapped up. Easy for a guy to we sell so many to guys this time of the year because it's easy. You just come in, give us $25. It's signed. All you got to do is it's got a little tag on it. You sign your name, from whoever to whoever, and you take it away, so we made it really easy. That was something we came out. It's probably about maybe 20 or 25 years old now, and it's exploded as we've gone on to Route 1, because the same thing, people like, man, I want that pasta pail for Christmas, but I don't want to drive into Rehoboth. Right. Well, guess what? You can go to takeout and get them, and it's easy, pull right up.
Well, if this airs in time, you will get a gift pail from Adam this year. And if not, don't worry, years to come. Yeah, because it's easy.
Well, you know what? No, funny story. Quickly, I used to always get the meatball pail.
Yeah.
And something that we don't talk about, but actually you're very well known. Your bread rolls. People love those.
Homemade.
Those are homemade. Those bread rolls were immense. I try and give up bread, but
I understand.
Man, I love those rolls. Like, I know we should be talking about the kabali and the pizzas and the sauce, but
we make
those rolls were famous.
People usually in the bakery business, if you own a bakery, majority of the time you come in at like 2 a.m. and you make them. You know what I mean? They make them all day. And a lot of bakeries are only open until 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Very rarely is a bakery open all day. Right. There are some, I'm sure, but majority of them, are the 5 to 6 till 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and then they're done. But we make our bread actually at 6 a.m. when my guy comes in. He'll make bread, and then we make them again at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So they're really never really stale. You know what I mean? Try to keep it fresh. That was my idea too. I'm like, why? We got these ones that we made at 6 a.m. and here at 8 o'clock at night we're still selling them. Why don't we make them at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and that'll run us until 11 or 12 at night. You know what I mean? And that was a big step in the business, especially talking to the guy, I got to make them twice in a row. Now he loves it, because he sees the end quality of it.
But that's the point, right? Anyone who's been in the restaurant industry, and sometimes like it's not the same equipment, right? So there's a reason why when you switch over a menu from either like a breakfast to lunch and a lunch to dinner, they're shutting these things down, they're turning them over. So to commit to rebaking in the afternoon so that everybody's getting a fresh product, that just goes to show that it's customer forward.
It's
neighborhood forward. That's
great. Bread rolls. Let me say, a great bread roll.
Oh my God! I love
any time of the day.
People. Someone today will come in and buy like 30 of them, like almost once a day.
Really?
Somebody will come in a lot, they'll buy a lot, or if they're having maybe not on a Tuesday in November, but you know what I mean? But on the weekend, you know what I mean? If they're having sandwiches or whatever, unbelievable. I sell a ton of them. Nice. 1 ton.
Bread's a big deal.
Just a crazy thing, because like I say, it's not something we... in a pizza place, you talk about the rolls, but man, when I used to order that pail and get the meatballs, I used to love the meatballs.
That's called the pasta pail.
Yeah, man, I always made sure, don't forget those rolls.
It is a great menu.
You can forget the salad. Do not forget the rolls. It's funny. I probably didn't have to tell my help that 3 weeks ago. I don't think the rolls were never the issue. It was the salad was the issue.
No, big menu, great menu. Great wings, bucket of wings. That's always a good thing.
Well, we talk about it because Frank's big thing, he judges everywhere by the wings. He'll go everywhere for his wings.
Yeah, the wings are good. But I sell a lot of, a ton. Ton's always a big word in my vocabulary forever. I sell a ton of wings. I actually buy it. We made our doors in the new restaurant. In the back doors where the deliveries come in, a whole pallet can come in it. So we open the doors up, and they literally bring pallets of potatoes in, pallets of flour, pallets of wings, pallets of sauce. You know what I mean? So we very thought out process we did at this restaurant. Very thought out process.
Well, you sold me when it was what is it, a 48 wing serving? I was like, okay.
That's a big pail.
When I have to ask people, well, what are your wings? What are you doing by 6, 8, 12? 48? It's done. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, we got, because I did that because I always look out for the customer. You know, I'm really so I'm like, if 5 guys come in and they order, 5 wings each, they're going to spend $100 on wings where they probably don't want to. You know what I mean? Let's do one big pail. It's a little crude. It's in a plastic tub.
Great.
Who gives a You're in Sussex County. Nobody cares. And they order them. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it makes out better. So I get more customers. The next thing you know, they're drinking. That's the main thing. You know what I mean? Add some little spice to it to make sure they get an extra beer. You know what I mean? Which is great.
Nick Jr., thank you again for coming on and educating us about the old times at the beach and now the new times with Nicola Pizza in Lewis on Route 1 going south. And like I say, I cannot, other than like say my issue I have with the Eagles and my little hoodoo I have, like you would never find a better place, all the different TVs for sport, but a great local place. That we all love, and thank you for.
The new place looks great. Nostalgia. It looks like that old pizza parlor, like where you want to bring the family and whatnot. Love the stories. Like,
thank you.
If you want to come back, we'd love to have you back. I'm sure.
I'd love to come back. Like I said, my general manager brought it up to me. I said, "Man, what the heck am I getting into?" Driving here, you're thinking, like, "Hey, I guess we're going to talk about Nicola's this and that." But I had a great time.
I'm glad you had a great time.
The guy told me it's an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 15 minutes. He said, it feels like 15 minutes.
I know.
Right or wrong. I never met you guys. I don't even know if I've laid eyes.
We did meet. You did a video for me at Black Oak. Do you remember?
I don't.
Even better. My new co-host, Nick Jr.
We did, at the entrance at the Lewis location. We were
What's
just
Black Oak? What's
Black Oak's a new community. Shut up. New community for Shell Brothers on New Roads.
Yes.
And we were going around like Lewis local businesses, and you had to say, "Are you ready?" Like I have a great video.
Oh, I remember now.
You were great. The guys loved you. We use your bit all the time.
I do remember that now. I do remember that.
And you know what's really funny, and we talk about it with here, and I know I will I'll see Nick Jr. at the supermarket. I have seen him at White's Supermarket a few times. This is a guy you'll meet in the restaurant, but you'll see. I guess, like I say, I always think back like there's businesses where you don't know the owner and you never will.
That's Nicola's is not that guy,
and that is not that is not Nicola, because you're going to see this guy in the local area, but also very much in the restaurant. And what a treasure you are.
Sometimes that's good, or that's bad.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you
guys.
Absolutely.
Cheers. Everything. That was awesome. That was great. Cheers.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was good. That was great.